Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Debating Dads podcast, brought to you by Moonlit Factory. Today is a very special edition because we're going to be introducing our Moonlit walks. I'm your man Nader. That's my man Josh. That's my man Quincy. And very special edition, that's our man Sway from the Wolfgang podcast. So,
AKA my big bro.
It's family shit right now.
and the newest father of the group. So today we thought that for Josh, Quincy, and I, it's been some time since we were fathers, right at the beginning. And we thought we'd ask Sway, who's a new father, what are some of his experiences, on being a new father? Remind us what it's like. How old is your child? Give us some updates.
Wow. Happy tired, man. That's my life right now. Happy tired. The happiest I've ever been. No, it's no, it's great, man. It's great. It's I don't know. I think you might forget, or I've already even forgotten how quickly babies grow. She's 8 months now, and since I've been here for 3 weeks, she started feeding herself, standing up, and crawling, all in 2 weeks, 2 week period. You know what I mean? But it's lovely, man. It's fun. It's new. It's fun. It's exciting, and I don't know what to say. It's just beautiful.
A different perspective on life, right?
Yeah, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's I don't know if you guys still have this, and hopefully you do, but when I could have a bad thought, and then I just look at my daughter, and everything changes. Like everything is just, but I don't know. It's you guys know it. I guess you guys forgot it. Not that perspective. I think you still look at your kids and feel great.
How long ago has been since you've been a father, Josh? When we're
Like starting probably
Yeah.
like 12 years, right? 12 years, two youths. Honestly, those things kind of just get blurred.
The early
The
infant
early
time.
infant times, they kind of like, lucky for your phones, like, hey, remember this date? Remember 5 years ago? It's like, oh shit, these guys were like this big, now they're like this tall, right? Right now it's more like I gotta now start prepping them to, be adulting kind of thing, like like taking care of yourself, wash your ass, wash your balls
That's
properly.
what being an adult is about.
But you know what I mean.
Wash-
But even the stuff.
Wash your
No,
balls.
like even so, like I never got that that talk. You know what I mean? Like, yo, make sure you wash your balls and your ass very properly. You know what I mean? I tell them 3 times at least. You wash your underarms. You know what I mean? Like,
you should have grown up Muslim, man. They just start that shit right.
right? But you guys also get the lota going on as well.
Quincy, how long for you since you've been a father?
My son is about to turn 15 this year, September.
Hard back.
So for me, I've been a father for a good while, and my most recent experiences were with my daughter, who's now 6, going to be 7 soon, and having a daughter is completely different from dealing with a son, right? You become more emotional when you have a little girl that looks up to you and someone that you have to like.
Well, you've had both, right?
Yeah, I have both, yeah. So, with my son, I wasn't as delicate. We would put on boxing gloves and beat the hell out of him sometimes. Like, toughen up. But
I mean, that's interesting, though.
Yeah.
Don't you think but that's that's just a gender role that you've kind of bought into, that you put on your son.
yeah,
Because you could have boxed with your daughter.
I could have, and I will eventually. Not to the same extent, but I kind of feel I have to help her build a certain toughness, right? Because life is not easy. You're going to get into scuffles. Girls get they get jealous of each other and they try to fight each other. So at some point, I have to teach her to defend herself, right? So I mean, you know, and yeah, you're right. Like in terms of gender, you automatically feel like you gotta make your son tougher than your daughter. But I mean, it
Probably
goes for
getting more fights though.
yeah. I mean, it goes for both of them, right?
But
I
do you
mean-
treat them differently?
No, I don't. I don't. Like when I gotta be stern with them, I'm stern. When I have to be, soft, I'm soft. I don't. I don't. I don't. I don't think I treat them any different from each other. It's not. No, not that I can personally like. Not that I personally notice. But yeah, I love them the same.
It's an interesting point, because for me, I had my two sons, one 13, one's 10 going 11, and just I don't remember a lot of the beginning because there was so much stress. I didn't have a lot of money at that time, and it was
I
just
think it was anger.
yeah, maybe. And it was just, I don't think I was so ready to be a father at that age. It just, I was 23 years old, and it was pretty overwhelming. Like I remember, like coming out of the hospital and putting my son in the car seat, and just being like, okay, now what, right? And it was a lot. And I think that as you kind of look back, and I see him as a teenager now, I'm like, wow, like where did the time go? Like my mom would always say that to me. She goes, before you know it, they'll be big. Before you know it. And you don't really believe that when they're like very small, but as Sway said, like, just that quickly. Having a daughter, I do know that, like, for example, you want to treat them absolutely equitably, but there's always going to be like little things. Like my boys always feel that she gets preferential treatment because I'm from a family of 3 brothers. Her cousins are mostly boys, so she's the only girl.
Oh yeah.
Right? She's the only girl, and so they feel that then when it comes to, let's say, how she wants to dress, even at 7 or 8, and her grandmother's very conservative Pakistani Muslim. There may be cultural or religious or just other things that she's kind of will kind of sort of contend with, and on top of that, being a divorced father, she's like between houses, right? And it's like how she's learning from her mom and her dad. It gives me some kind of interesting points of thought. And I do say, like, it is a little bit different. I didn't expect it to be different, raising a girl. But it is something that I can say I don't think I ever was really prepared for. I didn't grow up with any sisters. And I think that there has been like a lot of learning curve, and it could be like little small things, like A, I have no hair, and B, sometimes, like, I remember one time trying to do her hair, and like I pulled up a YouTube video, and it was maybe even harder than trying to learn how to change a tire from Quincy, and that went really poorly. But you try with stuff, and she just put the phone down. She's like, Dad, you don't have any hair. You don't know what you're doing. Let me do it. My mom came and did it. And I sometimes wonder, like, is there a manual for this stuff, especially when you're split? Like, you have to teach some of this stuff yourself. So those are just some of my sort of, initial thoughts as they sort of like grow up. But Sway, you had mentioned, at what age do you think parenting actually starts?
Well, I guess technically parenting starts from the day the kid's born, but I kind of call it the different stages. Just the infantile stage to me is not active parenting in that sense. It's maybe a bit more passive parenting. You're just trying to make sure that your kid doesn't kill himself, doesn't eat something too large and choke to death or something.
That's right.
That's kind of the event of the day. But
So, before you get past that, I got one question. What is your biggest fear as a new parent?
I think it's no fears. I mean, my fears have more to do with what the world is going to be like in 10 years and 15 years. That's kind of my biggest fear. Like, what do I need to equip my daughter with in order to be able to survive in 20 and 25 years? And that question I can't answer because I don't really know. You know, I don't. So it's kind of a mute point. It's kind of anxiety for no reason. So, but it's something that comes into my head.
So what
But
steps
what
do you
I,
take, though?
well, that's the thing. I think that what
gotta
I
do
try to
something.
focus on. No,
Yeah.
there's you asked the question based on fear.
Yeah.
It's more of like, what am I trying to focus on with my daughter? And what I really try to focus on is self-confidence. I think it's just a very important thing. Like, I
Very
want her to be able to make decisions and not be afraid of anything. I don't want to hear my daughter say, I can't. Just in general. Like, I can't do that. I can't draw that photo, Dad. I can't. I can't build that.
I struggle with that right now.
Yeah, I don't want that. You know what I mean? And I want my daughter to be quite independent in the sense of, you know, there's something to do with feeding. You know, there's a type of feeding. There's a type of feeding called baby-led weaning, which is when you give kids the food, like you lay out foods in front of them as babies. You know, when they start to eat, you can puree their food and give them pureed potatoes or pureed vegetables, or you can do what's called baby-led weaning. You put food in front of them and you kind of actively have them choose a bit more of what foods they want to eat, and they get to taste food in its normal state and its normal textures.
Yeah.
Like
you
a
know?
raw carrot or something.
Like a raw carrot, or a nectarine, or whatever the case is. And we've decided to do something in between, where we still give her like porridge and things like this, but we started her out early at like pieces of nectarine, pieces of mango, pieces of grapes or whatever. And it's fucking terrifying because you're sitting there watching your kid choking sometimes because they have a really quick gag reflex.
Did you guys do the infant CPR yet?
No.
You should
No, we did it. Sorry,
Yeah?
to training?
Yeah,
We did the
okay,
training.
yeah.
I thought you meant that I have to use
No,
that
no,
shit.
no, well,
and then you're like, you should though. You should. I'm like, what is this guy talking about?
In between brothers.
I'm like, nah, bro. But yeah, so it's I don't know. You know, whether it's gonna work or not, I'm not sure. But these are the kind of things like I'm just not afraid to do with my daughter, and I really just push her. Even at this age, I just push her to like, she want to stand up, stand up.
Just
She
try it,
want to,
yeah.
you know, and yeah, confidence and you know, down the line for me, it's critical thinking. I just want her to be able to be in a situation out in the world and be able to think and solve a problem.
Yeah.
So on the point of critical thinking, to the brothers here, sometimes critical thinking comes from like the different value systems or world systems. You're both, I guess, now the parents of mixed racial children, right? And so just growing up in a world, obviously both as black men, like what are some of the things you want to impart to your children who will forever be biracial children? Some of the things you faced or whatnot.
Well, I'm not biracial, so I would say anything.
Your children.
I don't know. I do tell them that life will be harder for them because they are already starting at a disadvantage in this world. They will see them as black children or black people first before they even, you know, open their mouths. So I try and let them know that, you know, you have to try almost harder, you know, sometimes even twice as hard, just to get to the same place as other people that can just walk into the same situation. So that's how I feel.
I don't know, actually. No, I don't know. It's I think it's quite complicated because I'm not sure. Again, I'm not quite sure. You know, there's a point where you create an anxiety in an individual, or you're, how do I say this? I'm very fearful, for example, of telling my daughter that she's at a disadvantage. You know what I mean? Just to say that to her in any rate, because this is maybe what she starts to believe, and this is what I don't want her to believe. You know, but I don't want her to walk through the world ignorant and naive to how the world may or may not see her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the answer is, I have to say, at the end of the day. I want her to be aware. I think it's, what I think is important when it comes to this kind of conversation about race, I think it's just important for
kids to be culturally connected to their cultures. I think it's important for my daughter to know you are Jamaican and you are German, and to understand that and to be connected to those cultures. Because I've seen a lot of kids that are biracial, that their dad's from Ghana or their dad's from anywhere in the world, and they grew up in Germany, for example, with their mother, and their only sense of culture is being white German. They don't have a black sense of culture. And even to be black doesn't mean anything without the culture. So you have to connect them to their culture. They got to know who the grandparents were, the stories about them, what the culture was around it, and who they are. And I think that's just very important.
That preservation. And maybe not mixed racial, but what about you, Quincy, as raising black children, like who are like as much progress as we're making in our society? We hear all the reports, and we whether it's anti-blackness, whether it's racial identities. How do you have those conversations with your growing children, your son, your daughter, about being black?
Well, truthfully, I don't. Right? I don't talk to them about the difference in race. Right? Just something that I never felt that I needed to do. But one thing I am noticing is that my daughter would come up, go up to her mom and be like, "Oh, I wish I was white," kind of thing.
So she said that to your.
She said that to her mom. So her mom messaged me and asked me about it. Where is she getting this from? Like, most likely it's happening at school, right? But then another thing that I've noticed is when she's playing with her toys. The darker doll is always on punishment, right?
Wow.
And the white doll is the one that she's always carrying around with her. So for me, it's like, okay, how do I deal with this, right? So I always ask her, like, why don't you play with the other doll as much? She's like, oh no, she's being bad and she's okay. So I'm wondering if she's associating this with herself, right? And every time she does something that she gets put on timeout or whatever. But like, yeah, I'm still in the midst of trying to figure that out, right? But other than that, I don't really talk to her about, well, you know what, you're a black girl and things are going to be different for you. I don't discuss those things with her. Same with my son, right? My son is part African and Zimbabwean. So yeah, not too sure if his mom does, but so far he's never come up to me and expressed anything about anyone being, racist towards him or anything. Right? So I haven't had to deal with it. And my own experiences throughout life, no one has ever directly come up to me like, yeah, you're a black guy, you can't do this or that. No, I've never experienced that as yet.
It don't usually come to your face.
It doesn't come to your face.
They usually do it
But
behind your back.
sometimes
I've
it
had
does,
that.
yeah.
I haven't had it yet.
And a lot of times I also think, because I'm black, but have a fairer complexion.
Or maybe light skins.
I think the experiences are a little different, right? I mean, amongst black people, I'm not black enough. Amongst white people, I'm black.
But do you get that though?
So I do get that. Right? I do get it, right? But I mean, you look at my mom is a dark-skinned woman, right? And even growing up, there were times that I would cry, Mom, why am I so fair? Like, that was my issue, right?
Well, even the word fair, we have that in the South Asian culture. My daughter is of a darker skin tone than her brothers, and she comes and so she asks, and it's a really question. And I know it's been a challenge for my parents because they've grown up in a South Asian, Pakistani, Indo-Pak culture where the word fair, like there's actually a cream called Fair and Lovely
The lightning.
it's a lightning, and like where like fair is code word for light skin, and charming is code word for dark skin. So when if you're girl, and it was interesting because my daughter has her mother's skin tone, And she would come sometimes and she goes, why do I look different, right? And my brother, who also has a darker skin tone. And you know, on top of that of being Muslim, and like it's interesting because we're taught to not discriminate around skin tone, but it's there are hierarchies. Like black Muslims do not get treated as well, even in the city, as lighter skinned Muslims. And that's actually always been something that like I kind of have to look at, because it's something that I never had to think about so much until somebody points it out to you.
Well, in my family, like in my younger days, most of my family were dark skinned, but now everyone is, you know, mixing with everybody. So we have a lot of, you know, mixed kids in our family now. So it's a lot. It's more normalized now than back when I was younger. So yeah, the whole situation of her thinking about, you know, the skin tone and, you know,
How old is she?
She's 6. Like the texture of her hair, stuff like that. You know, this is like a learning. It's like a learning situation for me, right? I gotta
You gotta get on that.
now learn how to deal with this.
Well, it goes to the point that I think that you, on one hand, don't want to like poison the well and say the world's going to be against you, whatever. But the other hand, you have to prepare them, because they are going to run into, you know, times, and it could be covert or overt racism. And like, are you ready to have those conversations? And it could be around aspects of their identity. And just as people of color, like for me, it's the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming up, and I live in a country, Canada, where people are literally still getting run over for wearing headscarves, right? And 20 years later, we're having kids with Muslim names. That's not the world I thought I'd be raising my kids in, right? I thought it would ostensibly be getting better, and with things like white supremacy, Islamophobia, it really makes me pause. And as a father, like, what identity are you putting out there? What are you trying to hide? What are you trying to put out there? And you know, when my kids saw that, like, it was a very tough conversation. There was a family in Canada, and they were walking out, and some of them were wearing headscarves, and they were run over by a white supremacist, and outside of the sun, everyone else was killed. And it really shattered a piece of calm in the Canadian psyche that we're Canada, we're not America, and this isn't supposed to happen. But this is years later, and he was charged with like a hate crime, whatever. But since then, Muslims have come forward, and there's just this real sense of dread. It's not only getting better, but it's getting worse. And with kids who are growing up, it makes you actually viscerally angry. Like, so I can't just tell my kids, it's all going to be fine because everyone's going to accept you, because there's people who are not going to accept you.
I think kids need to be, I think Quincy's a great example, because I think his 6-year-old is going through an identity crisis. And you had no idea that she was going through an identity crisis. And a lot of 6-year-olds right now are going through identity crisis, especially if you're a person of color. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting. I think 25 years ago, 30 years ago, a 6-year-old was just concerned with going to the park, to how many friends they were going to have at the park.
Yeah.
And now,
Not even. Just like, I'm going to meet my friends in the park. Are they going to be outside?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't have those. We didn't have those problems. We weren't even inside.
Well, yeah, but it's a good point. I just think that now the level of the weight, you know, the awareness and the weight of awareness is getting younger and younger and younger. And
The interweb.
Yeah, so you know, it's something you got to try and figure out pretty quick.
Yeah, because
Too much access to everything.
One thing her mom would tell me is like, you know what? Every day you tell her she's beautiful. You know, just trying to lift her spirits all the time. You know, build that confidence in them. But one thing you realize is, as much as you tell them that they're good looking and, you know, most beautiful kids in the world to you, whatever. You know, it's
All it takes is one person.
one thing. It just takes one little thing to make them
Doubt themselves.
develop that doubt.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, mom, this kid at school said this to me. And no matter how you try to tell her that or him that, you know what, don't listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's burnt into
They're
their
gonna.
head, you know, and
Well, it's I mean,
Because they don't really listen to us.
Yeah.
They listen to their friends more than they listen to
Yeah,
us.
So it
Well,
all.
it-
Go ahead.
No, I think it really depends, you know, and what I mean is that like this kind of goes back to the point of why I think culture is so important, because a young black girl who just thinks that she's black, she just knows she's black. That's all she knows. She's dark, and everything around her, when the world around her says that there's something wrong with her, or that she's not white, that environment can become very toxic. You know what I'm saying? But if that individual has such a connection to the culture that they're from, where they can go to a place where there are black people everywhere,
Yeah.
or there are Asian people everywhere, or there are, you know, Pakistani people everywhere, that builds a different type of confidence. You know what I mean? It builds a very, very different type of confidence. And I think that's what I find here that is very difficult. A lot of people, especially like in Canada, for example, you have a lot of families that have come here. No, families that have come here, and you know, people like us that are born. You're black, you're Japanese, you're Pakistani, you're wherever. You speak English, and you're in this limbo place of culture.
Yeah.
Because you're not Canadian. You don't really identify with Canadian.
I would always joke. I said we
I
have.
identify as Canadian.
Well, you see, that becomes the problem, I think,
Yeah.
because you're not, in a way. You know, like all blood that runs through you is from somewhere else.
Yeah,
You
like
just
no
happen
one's
to be
Canadian other than natives. Like, you know, like the native people.
Well, what I'm trying to say is like when you look at the Canadian culture, it
That's not your
supports
culture, basically.
it supports.
No, it's not my culture.
Well, it
but
supports
it's,
and represents people that are not you.
True.
And when you think you're in it, and you think I'm a Canadian,
Yeah.
and even when you're in it,
You're not in
nothing
it.
looks like you. You don't see Mounties that look black on posters and all that kind of
Yeah.
shit. Nothing looks like you. And so I think people get trapped. You get trapped in the sense of like, okay, well, that's them. You know, if you're looking at white people, or even if it's native people, it's not you. You know what I mean? And then where do you fit? So if you don't have a sense of like, okay, well, where am I? What are your kids gonna have?
Yeah.
And so they're gonna grow up even
fucked.
I don't even want to say more fucked, but even more confused. It's very difficult to gain a confidence in just, well, you're beautiful, and it's like, but why? You know what I mean? There are I don't know. Sorry, not to rant, but if you look at, I think if white people can look and say, okay, I'm beautiful, white's beautiful, white's back in art, white Da Vinci drew about white people, and that was beautiful, and you know, you go back to 1500s of, you know, the medieval times, and you know, there were things that showed people white beautiful, white beautiful, white beautiful, all the way up to Hollywood.
And just to add to that, when you go to school, history, everything.
Everything shows you this. So then you have a black girl, a little black girl, any person of color who's a girl or a boy, and somebody tells them they're beautiful. The question is, well, why?
They don't see
Right?
themselves
Why?
in it.
Yeah.
And then, but however, in all of these cultures we don't discuss, there is histories in them that show them in those same places. Princes and
beautiful.
kings,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean, from different Ashanti tribes in Ghana and all these different places. And I think when people can connect to those things, then they get on the same level. Those kids get on the same level.
Sense
They're
of
like,
pride.
yeah, okay, I'm beautiful too, and I know I'm beautiful. We got all this too. We
Yeah.
just don't talk about it here.
Exactly.
But I talk about that with my family, or I just know.
Yeah.
And I think this is so important for kids. It's so
That's a
important.
great point.
Well, and it also, just to add to that, is the ad says that when children, whether it's in arts, sports, entertainment, politics, see someone who looks, act, and is unafraid of that identity and wins on that identity, right? It gives those kids somebody to say, yeah, like that person looks like, isn't hiding from those. And you're right, the Western civilization, my undergrad's in anthropology, is all built on the colonization of marginalized and racialized people, and then sort of a whiteness put on top of that. So you don't even know where stuff came from.
Yeah.
Right? You don't even know where stuff came from. And then when people discover this and find this out, and that, oh my gosh, so many things that happen in Western society are from the African civilizations or the Ottoman Empire or like whatever, people are like, what? That can't be possible, right? Like you know, it can't be possible that like the graduation ceremony came because Europeans went to the Muslim world and they started wearing robes because that's how they. No way. We invented it. We invented it. and there's, but what happens is, I think, in this reclamation project, I think with things like the internet, with whatnot, the common thread is identity. So maybe as sort of a concluding thought, is if there's one thing you could say, either past, present, future, to your children about identity, what is the one thing you would say to them about identity, Josh?
Don't start here. I gotta think about it.
That's not what he said. So
That's what he said.
I gotta think about it.
Think about this.
It's a hard one right there.
So for me, I will tell them that your identity will always be in flux, because you live in an era where in your phone you have more knowledge than the great libraries of human civilization. You will be able to encounter people without ever leaving your couch. And you will be going to school with people that will challenge your assumptions of the world. And that said, it's going to be up for you to how you mix those and remix those identities. That's going to be up to you. Your parents, myself included, though they will teach you. But how you determine what is your specific form of identity is going to be up to you. But you should know what your identities are, where you came from. Even if you want to reject them, if you're going to reject them, know what they are. Know what your grandparents' lineage are. Know what their religion is. Know what their culture is. Figure it out. Find it out. Don't ask somebody to tell you, oh, did you know about your grandparents? Your dad did this, whatnot. Find that out. So these are the types of things that is always going to be in flux. Quincy?
Well, to be honest, same as Josh, this is something I will have to figure out as well. Because, yes, I am black, but I'm also part Native. And that's a part of me that I don't really know too much about. So these are things that I need to discover for myself before I can actually teach my kids about, how they should be thinking about their own identities. But, I'm forever learning, and it's something that they will probably be doing as well for the rest of their existence, right?
Don't allow anyone to sway and alter your self-image. The image I've helped them build for themselves. Other than that, I'm sorry I should have went first, but it's long-winded. But I'm gonna pass it to my big bro because he's got a lot on his mind. He has a lot to say.
It's a tough question, man.
It's a hard question.
That's why I always ask them.
Ideally, I think identity is just, I think it's just also a concept. It's a social construct. You know what I mean? What is identity, I guess, at the end of the day? But the only thing I'm going to do with my daughter is present to her the information. You know what I mean? I'm going to give her, I've decided I'm going to take regular trips to Jamaica. I'm going to take her to West Africa. I'm going to, come back to Toronto to see her family. I'm going to make it an effort for her to have the books, the information all around her, and she's going to have to do what she's going to do with it. And that's, I'm not going to force her to be something, but I can't expect her to be something if I didn't build that with her in the first place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So as a kid, I think it's important for my daughter, for example, to be in a safe space to explore her identity as a mixed race child. And so, I really sought out a kindergarten in Berlin that caters to mixed race kids. There's only two of them. There's only two of them.
It's Europe for you,
And I
Fucking Europe,
no, it's
right?
only Berlin for you.
Only
and I found one, and I got in, and it took a bit of hustle, and I got her in, and there's 70% black kids. There's white kids, and there's other kids there, but they focus on teaching black culture, singing songs. Also German. It's also in German, but they focus on having a balanced, safe space where people are not going to walk up to my daughter and say, "Can I touch your hair?"
Yeah.
And this kind of thing. So I think it's very important for me to put her in these spaces and allow her to explore like this, and so that she can later be able to say, well, if she wants to be more German, then be more German. If she wants to be more Jamaican, then be more Jamaican.
Yeah.
But I have to. My job is to present to her enough substance and information. You know what I mean?
Before we go, before we finish,
To build her own identity.
That's really what it is.
I actually wanted to ask you, like, how has your experience been in Germany? You know, as a black man, you know, getting around in that society, especially with
You know, it's a different type of racism. You know, my partner in Wolfgang, Abe, he was recently attacked on the subway, broke his shoulder. He was in the hospital when his daughter was born. You know, missed the birth. He FaceTimed with his daughter while his wife was in another hospital across town having their baby. And you know, it really changed my perspective in the sense of I always thought Berlin was super safe. You know, and it's not a place where you get shot. It's not a place where police pull you over and, you know, harass you. It's not that kind of thing. You don't get drawn down all the time. But it's a different type of racism. It's a very, what I call an old kind of colonial racism, in the sense that you'll never see black people in political points of power. You'll never see black leaders of France and Italy and that kind of places. There's a glass ceiling for people of color there, and they tend to keep it that way.
Yeah,
you know?
I had the same sense in the Netherlands growing up there. It's different.
It's different. It's not in your face, but it's old. It's just it's in the water. It's in the everything. You know, it's just in the structure. You know what I mean?
Racism here.
That's like hidden. They won't. You know, they'll just whisper and kind of like.
But one thing, I mean, to kind of go back to, which I think is the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about, which I think is incredibly important to children and babies and their identity and who they become, is their relationship between their parents. You know, and it's quite interesting and serendipitous that, you know, you guys are all separated.
Yeah.
And I'm been with my girlfriend for, I don't know, 17, 18 years now. I've known her. So for me, this is like, I don't know, this is like the start of everything. You know, like it's I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like if I don't have it, I can't build anything on it. It's really difficult to build on not having this nucleus. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that you you guys can't build that, but
we can. It's just a different plan.
Yeah,
it's a different blueprint.
And you know, because I don't know. I think one of the things that I will really try. I might be speculating, but from what I know or what I believe is that one of the things I don't want to have in the space of my daughter growing up is this kind of resentment or anger. You know, like I don't want to have to take care of that in order to build on top of that.
Yeah.
You know, I want her to just feel love, have love, be love, and then on top of that, we build. You know, we build identity and we build confidence and all these other things. You know, but I think that's one thing that you guys might be dealing with that might be very different, is that there's just that underlying, when your parents aren't together, and that we know that because we had that as kids.
Exactly.
There's just, it's like you got to get rid of the anger and you got to deal with all that, and then you got to start building on it, and it's, you know, it's a tough thing.
And it comes to cycles. It's a theme for what we do. Identity is fluid, not just on their culture, their religion, but even back and forth on a week-to-week basis, because they're going from system to system, back and forth. And yes, there is, whether it's overt anger, or covert resentment, it's just, as a child, that world will never seem fair to you. And even though the child adjusts, they always are in a notion that that's my mom, that's my dad. And there's always, the hardest place for a child to be is in the middle of that. And they always end up there just by circumstance. And so it's a great point and a great segue for what we talk about, is the world for our children is always going to look like a bit different than those who've had parents who've like stuck together in whatever, for whether it's living, girlfriend. For us, they're always going to know a world that is between worlds, and so that is probably our concluding thought, that it's always a consistent journey for us. There's never a real destination, but we're always talking about it. I'm your man Nader.
Hold on, one thing. The concluding question or the concluding statement is, we all talk to you guys and we try and drop, you know, some knowledge, some tidbits, and it's honestly to stop you guys from getting to here. Not to say that our lives are shit, but if we all could, we would all be in a situation like my brother's here, where you have a loving family with both parents that can love the kids equally and make them, it's like once the parents split, it's almost like the kids are almost at a disadvantage already, because they are literally split.
That's what my mom says.
But it's not to say that the kids can't feel love when you're separate.
They will, but
They
it's
will.
a different
It's-
kind,
It can.
right?
It's different. But it doesn't mean that when you split, you just run for the hills and forget about your kids.
You don't split.
Yeah, it's also, you know, and now we're just rambling on, but it's also, it's not just, it's the relationship, because it just makes me think there are couples that split that are best friends after.
Thank you for joining us on our Brolit walk. We'll try to make these something you see more regular of us. And as Brolit Moonlit walks, as always, it's a continuing discussion. We don't have all the answers, but we do have a lot of questions. And for those new fathers out there, we're hoping that you take the time to appreciate your family, to appreciate the moments that you have. And hey, don't learn from your mistakes, learn from ours.
Yeah.
I'm my man Nader. That's my man Josh. It's my man Quincy. And special edition, that's my man Sway.
What up, what up? And it's Wolfgang. WOOL-F-gang.
Gang.
Say bye to them in
Hit us
German.
up on Instagram.
Say bye to them in German for us, friend.
Was kann ich sagen? Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Assalamu alaikum, Quincy in Dutch.
Goedenacht. Zie jullie later.
And goodbye from Canada, eh?
That's it.